Next to me is the Li Auto's mid to large 6-seat all-electric SUV, the Li Auto i8. I know that many of you watching this video right now are probably already familiar with its exterior and interior, so today we won't be doing the most detailed walkthrough on the internet. Instead, we'll keep it as concise and clear as possible so you can quickly get to know this Li Auto i8. The first question is about the debate over whether it looks more like an SUV or an MPV. But honestly, I don't think that's all that important, because what the Li Auto i8 really wants to present to you is a vehicle that has a very clear focus on functionality, a large 6-seat vehicle with exceptional comfort and spaciousness. That's the kind of SUV it's defined as. So I believe that whether you call it an SUV or use this kind of definition, the distinction will only get blurrier as time goes on. In fact, from my perspective, I think it's more like a functional and somewhat personalized MPV. I'm not sure if everyone agrees, but let's first look at the vehicle's dimensions. Actually, the length of the i8 is almost the same as the Li Auto L8, and it's about 14 centimeters shorter than the Li Auto L9. However, its entire interior passenger space is on par with the L9, and it might even be a bit more spacious than the L9. In short, to sum it up in one sentence, it has the size of the L8, but the space of the L9. I know putting these two terms together sounds a bit contradictory and somewhat disjointed. So how exactly did it achieve this? Let's take a look at the front of the car. As you can see, it's very obvious the i8's front end is indeed quite short. The distance from the center of the wheel hub to the front of the car is only about this much. So at this point, everyone should stop asking that question. Does the Li Auto i8 have a front trunk? The front needs to house a 150 kW front motor, as well as the electronic controls, cooling system, and on top of that, this car is all-wheel drive, so there really isn't any space for a front trunk. However, this short front end really does give the i8 an impressively spacious cabin. Next, let's look at a few more details. First, the Li Auto i8 this time comes with a 21-inch 7-spoke aero-style wheel. It's clearly a low-drag wheel, but among all the low-drag wheels I've seen on the market, this design is actually quite aesthetically pleasing. I wonder if you all agree. Another feature is Li Auto's signature star ring headlights. Compared to what we saw before on the Mega, there's a very noticeable upward angle. Also, the LiDAR sensor on top of the car has become overall smaller in size, so the overall integration of the design looks even better. In addition, the entire Li Auto i8 features a very classic teardrop shape, so the highest point of the car body is right here, which is roughly above the second row around the head area. This brings a very direct benefit. When you open the car door, it also has air suspension, which allows the ground clearance to be lowered to a minimum of 131 millimeters. And with a very high roofline, getting in and out of the car is extremely convenient and comfortable. Additionally, when you're moving from the second row to the third row, it doesn't feel cramped at all. In fact, this kind of design is extremely practical in your daily use. Now let's take a look at the trunk, which is also something everyone cares about. This time, the Li Auto i8's trunk depth is 2 centimeters longer than that of the Li Auto L9. So have you noticed that after shortening the front of the car, not only does it provide a much better passenger space, but the trunk's loading capacity is also improved. Today, we put a 28-inch checked suitcase in here and placed 2 backpacks next to it. In fact, according to the official data, it can actually fit 5 20-inch suitcases under normal circumstances. As for carry-on suitcases, you can figure out the specific arrangement yourself. When you open the cover below, there's also a clearly extended space going downward. In terms of functionality, the i8 this time features air suspension height adjustment here in the third row, as well as power folding for the third row seats. However, there's one thing I'm not sure if you've noticed, that is, there is no 220V power outlet in the trunk, only a 12V cigarette lighter socket. Alright, next, let's take a look at the interior of the Li Auto i8. At first glance, the whole interior might seem not much different from the previous Li Auto L9, but in fact, all the changes are in the details. The interior of this i8 we're looking at today features one of Li Auto's classic color schemes, an urban interior with a silver exterior. So where are the detailed changes? First of all, you won't see many of those straight, rigid lines inside the i8 anymore. There are a lot more curves now, for example, on the front windshield area and here on the door panels. Everything is made up of curves. The addition of these curved lines gives the interior a more homely and cozy visual effect. Additionally, I really have to commend the Li Auto designers for their research into interior materials. As you can see, whether it's the logo on the steering wheel, the buttons, door handles, and speaker covers on the door panels, all the metal elements inside the car use this kind of dark matte material similar to rose gold. No matter how it looks or feels to the touch, the quality is top-notch. I also believe that using this material ensures that under any circumstances, there won't be any reflective metal surfaces inside the car that could affect your driving visibility. They really deserve a lot of praise for this. In addition, behind the steering wheel, there's a newly added design detail, a speaker dedicated specifically for the driver. Why do I say it's for the driver? Because all the alerts related to driving safety are played through this speaker. Now, you might say that in some car models, these sounds come from the headrest speakers, which I agree are also quite useful. Of course, I know those are handy too. But as you know, in the entire Li Auto family of vehicles, these soft plush headrests are extremely popular with users. But I also think it really enhances your overall driving comfort. So, placing the speaker here not only ensures your comfort, but also guarantees your driving safety. As for other details, for example, the steering wheel on the i8 has been made a bit thicker, so the grip and the overall sense of unity feel more harmonious. The main sofa seat has also been upgraded this time, though at first glance you might not notice it. It's not that obvious, but the side bolsters and the overall sofa padding are noticeably fuller. I really recommend that everyone sit on this sofa and experience it carefully, because I know that this time what everyone is most interested in about the i8 is its second row and third row space. Alright, now let's sit in the second row and get a feel for the overall space here. The front seat is adjusted so that the B pillar is behind me, which is a pretty comfortable position for me. The first thing that's immediately noticeable is that a small tray table has been added to the back of the front seat. This means that now both seats in the second row of the i8 are equipped with these tray tables. Tray table equality, so to speak. In addition, after sitting in the second row, my overall impression is that the seating experience is not much different from that of the Li Auto L9. However, as I mentioned earlier, with the use of these curves and the overall sense of openness inside the car, you'll feel that the spaciousness you get while sitting in the second row is still quite impressive. But I have to point out that the Li Auto i8 still features the same 8.8-liter fridge as before, along with the same design that allows for temperature control from 0 to 50 degrees Celsius. In other words, if you want to keep an ice cream in the i8's fridge during the summer, that wish still can't be fulfilled for now. But what has changed? The overhead TV has been upgraded to a 21-inch large screen, just like the one in the Mega. Let's test it out. Li Xiang, please. Turn on the Alpha TV, and once this 21-inch screen is on, you really do feel that the overall visual effect is much more impressive and impactful. However, I think because the cabin space inside the i8 isn't as expansive as the Mega, when you sit in the second row, you're actually quite close to the screen. It's a bit like sitting in the front row at a movie theater. It's a little too close and you have to look up. But if you sit in the third row, you might actually get the best viewing position. Alright, let's get a very direct feel for the third row seating space. Right now, I've adjusted the second row seat to a fairly comfortable angle, not too cramped. Let's check out the third row. First of all, a major difference between this third row and the one in the Li Auto L9 is that there's no step between the second and third rows here. It's completely flat, so for you, this means the support for your legs is also more relaxed. Additionally, the third row seat in the i8 is actually higher than what we're familiar with in the BMW iX3. So this really breaks the common impression that third row seats are just like little stools. You can see that both the support for your knees and the overall width and length of the seat are quite decent in my opinion. So I think when you sit in the third row, the first thing you'll notice is that the seat is actually quite good and the overall visibility is also excellent. But friends, I just discovered a bug. As we know, the passageway to the second row in the i8 is quite wide, so you'll notice that the two independent seats in the second row are positioned more toward the sides. So when you get to the third row, because of the wheel arches on both sides, the third row seats and the second row seats can't be perfectly parallel. For example, you can see that the edge of the third row seat is here, while the edge of the second row seat is over there. This means that if I'm sitting here and want to put my feet completely under the second row seat, you'll notice that my lower body feels a bit twisted. In this situation, if I try to look at the Alphard's screen, you'll find that the seating position isn't all that comfortable. So what's the solution here? You just take one foot out and then you'll feel much more comfortable, not so twisted anymore. So once you spot a problem in time, you can solve it right away. And look here, in the third row, there's also an electric backrest adjustment. That means if you don't have too much luggage in the back, you can really relax and lie down in the third row and have a perfect spot for watching movies. Honestly, in the Alphard, the third row is the best seat for watching movies. After experiencing the space in the first, second, and third rows just now, indeed, the space utilization in the i8 this time is truly exceptional. The key point is, this is a vehicle that's not even 5.1 meters long. If it were a 5.2 meter vehicle, you can imagine just how impressive the space utilization would be. So, what is the biggest benefit brought by such an exceptional space utilization? It's that your driving burden becomes extremely light, and this is actually the part I'm most looking forward to today. Now let's take the i8 for a drive and see how it actually feels on the road. Alright, now we're officially going to take this Li Auto i8 for a drive. Honestly, my very first and most direct impression as soon as I got behind the wheel is that the visibility is truly excellent. It's very open and expansive. This is indeed because the Li Auto i8 has a relatively short hood and a more sloping front, so there's nothing blocking my view ahead. But I also considered one issue. If you're just getting into this car for the first time and aren't yet familiar with judging the distance to the front, you might feel a bit uncertain at first. However, after driving it for a few minutes, you'll probably really start to enjoy this completely unobstructed view in front of you. It feels great and is very comfortable to drive. While the view ahead is extremely open, the rear visibility in this Li Auto i8 is also done very well. The clarity and smoothness of the digital rear view mirror display are both excellent. Some screens can be overly sharp, which can make you feel a bit dizzy after looking at them for a while, but this time, I think the way the i8 presents the entire field of view is something I'm really satisfied with. Another very obvious and intuitive feeling is that the i8 can provide a cabin environment with a level of quietness very similar to the Li Auto Mega. I also asked the Li Auto staff this time, and besides the fact that the i8 has a relatively short front end, which means a smaller frontal area and thus a very good drag coefficient, every piece of side glass you can see from the triangular window all the way back uses double-layer laminated glass. So the entire sense of quietness created is unmatched, so if you drive the Mega and the i8, the in-cabin experience is almost identical. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned that the i8 is a very clearly family-oriented SUV. You might worry that, oh, does that mean it's going to be too comfortable, too soft, and lack that sharp, sporty driving feel on the road? But that's actually not the case at all. Now, after we've picked up the speed in this i8, we've set its power mode to standard. The suspension height is at standard, and for comfort, I've set the suspension to comfort. There's absolutely none of that excessive softness. Whether it's tuned more towards sportiness or comfort, the overall performance it delivers is really impressive. Now, if you look at its hardware, the front double wishbone and rear 5-link suspension aren't exactly rare configurations. But this time, Li Auto has really put a lot of effort and investment into the i8's chassis and suspension. For example, it uses lighter all-aluminum control arms, dual air suspension, CDC, continuous damping control, and even more expensive hydraulic bushings. These are features we used to see mostly on many luxury vehicles. This time, Li Auto has incorporated the whole package into the i8. So now, when we drive at speed and encounter bumps, potholes, speed bumps, or manhole covers of various heights and depths on the road, the way it handles them is very straightforward. Clean and decisive with no hesitation at all. It just glides right over, almost like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. You don't feel any of that bouncing or jolting sensation. This is very similar to the sharp handling you might experience in some sporty sedans, but it doesn't give you that harsh, jarring feeling like being bounced around. That's where I think the Li Auto i8 really stands out. It's a clear advantage. As I've said before, you can tell they've invested real effort here, and the results are obvious. Now that we're on the highway, we can get a more direct feel for the Li Auto i8's power output. All models in the lineup come with dual-motor all-wheel drive and 400 kilowatts of power. Plus, the Li Auto i8's body is actually shorter than the Li Auto L9 and the Mega. So the steering response at the front and the way the body follows are both more obedient and responsive. Some people might wonder if equipping the entire Li Auto i8 lineup with dual-motor all-wheel drive makes the cost a bit high, and whether that really suits the needs of typical users. I thought about this just now. If you're buying a large all-electric 6-seater, part of your usage is definitely going to be driving it yourself or with just one other person on a daily basis. If you're carrying 5, 6, or even 7 people every day, then most of your usage scenarios would probably be better suited to an MPV. So in normal situations, like when you're driving by yourself, you still want that sharp, responsive driving feel. That's how I see it, at least. Of course, I know a lot of people are also concerned about its range. The i8 actually comes in 2 battery versions, a 90 kWh and a 97.8 kWh, which provides 670 km and 720 km of range, respectively. But I still feel that things like charging convenience and range anxiety aren't really concerns for potential ideal i8 customers. That's because it offers 5C fast charging, just like the Mega. Today we've run the battery down to about 20% or so, and we're going to test the official claim that you can get 500 kilometers of range with just 10 minutes of charging. Let's see if that's actually achievable. Let's give it a try. Alright, let's do a real-world test with this ideal i8, which currently has 28% battery left. We're going to see exactly how much range we can add in 10 minutes of charging. Right now, it's 6:42 p.m. Let's check how much range we can recover after 10 minutes. Later, okay, it's 6:52 p.m., exactly 10 minutes. Let's stop charging and take a look at the numbers. Let me report the numbers to everyone. We started charging from 28% battery, and after 10 minutes of charging, the display now shows 86%. We've added 418 kilometers of range. The official claim is that you can add 500 kilometers of range in 10 minutes of charging. In our real-world test, we managed to add 418 kilometers in 10 minutes, which isn't a huge difference, especially since we started charging at nearly 30%. So what do you think? Are you satisfied with this charging efficiency? Today, we experienced the Li Auto i8 from every angle, both dynamically and statically. You'll notice that it has a very clear target user group. It's a family-oriented SUV. It offers a spacious interior, excellent ride comfort, a large battery, low drag coefficient, 5C ultra-fast charging, and all models come with dual-motor all-wheel drive. On top of that, Li Auto has even managed to fit such a large 97.8 kWh battery into the i8. They've also installed over 15,000 charging stations nationwide, so I believe that potential i8 users definitely won't see charging as a major source of anxiety. Of course, if we think about it, looking at the entire market, there's never a shortage of highly popular, large, six-seater, all-electric SUV models. For example, the Royale L90, which just recently announced its pre-sale price, has some very clear advantages. Even though it doesn't have a huge battery, it offers battery swapping, so users don't have to worry about charging anxiety. Plus, the Royale L90 has an impressively large front trunk, providing great storage space. However, when it comes to its driver assistance system, the L90 doesn't have LiDAR. It relies entirely on a pure vision-based driver assistance solution, which brings the pre-sale price is 193,000 yuan, which is indeed a very cost-effective choice. Of course, there's also a strong competitor, the soon-to-be-released Ito M8 pure electric version. That car's most direct advantages are its Harmony OS cockpit, the ADS 4.0 driver assistance system, dual zero-gravity power seats, and other highly popular high-tech features. There's also another car that hasn't officially debuted yet, but is already generating a lot of buzz, the Tesla Model YL, which will be unveiled this fall and also features a third row of seats. So personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the overall three-row experience will be like once that car is officially unveiled. Therefore, if we compare these cars as a whole, they each have different technical approaches and considerations for their target users. After watching today's video, you can also make a side-by-side comparison of the current large six-seat pure electric models on the market to see which ones best fit your own driving needs. Finally, let's return to that question. Do you think the Li Auto i8 is competitive enough among the large six-seat pure electric SUVs on the market? Feel free to discuss it in the comments section.